Ich war in Auschwitz eines Tages sehr down, konnte nicht mehr. Ich bin geschlagen worden am Tag vorher und das hat mich sehr auch moralisch beeindruckt. Und es war ein Sonntagmorgen und da habe ich gesagt, ich kann nicht aufstehen. Da haben meine Kameraden, alles Holländer natürlich, ich war ja schließlich doch Deutscher unter Holländern, aber ich bin vollkommen aufgenommen worden von den anderen, gesagt, das geht nicht, du musst aufstehen, sonst bist du verloren. Und dann sind sie zu einem holländischen Arzt gegangen, der mit dem deutschen Arzt zusammengearbeitet hat. Und dieser holländische Arzt kam zu mir in die Baracke. Er hat gesagt, steh auf und komm morgen früh an die Krankenbaracke sozusagen. Ich werde mit dem deutschen Arzt sprechen, dass du aufgenommen wirst. Und so ist es gekommen. Und dadurch bin ich auch gerettet worden.
While Otto languished in an Auschwitz sick barracks, his daughters were transported away. On October the 28th, 1944, they were separated from their mother, and together with 1,308 other women, they were sent here, to Bergen-Belsen concentration camp in Germany. Rachel von Amerungen-Frankfurter was with them.
You see it now with your own eyes, how beautiful it is. It is beautiful. And there were birds here. I wanted to be a bird. Freedom, freedom, freedom. I thought, oh, how nice to be a bird. You can fly wherever you go. I was simply jealous of birds.
When Anna, Margot, Rachel and the others arrived at Bergen-Belsen, the camp was overflowing with new inmates brought here from throughout Europe. The new barracks that were being built to accommodate them were not yet ready, and they were crammed into the makeshift shelter of tents. On November the 7th, a violent storm raged through the camp, destroying many of these. Seeking shelter from the rain, Anna and Margot encountered Lientje and Jani Brilleslijper, the two Dutch sisters whom they knew from Auschwitz and Westerbork.
Het stormde, het hagelde. We hadden 4 kilometer gelopen. En we zaten met z'n tweeën alleen twee gezichtjes uit 2 dekens. Kan je dat, van die donkere paardendekens. Wij met onze hoofden tegen elkaar aan. En dan alleen die gezichtjes er zo uit 2 hoopjes op een klein heuveltje tegen een boom aan. Om zo droog mogelijk te blijven. En daar komt aangestapt 4 benen. Met ook 2 dekens over zich heen. Ook over hun koppen. En we zien ze. En we gooien alle tegelijk onze dekens terug. En roepen, oh wat heerlijk dat jullie er zijn. Hoe kan je nou iets heerlijk vinden midden in een concentratiekamp?
Deliberately starved, frozen and racked with disease, Bergen-Belsen was no place to be in those last months of World War II. Eventually a wooden barracks was found for the unfortunate Jewish women from Auschwitz, but Anna and Margot Frank came to be in the worst position of all, in the lower bunk right next to the door, incapable of protecting themselves from the vicious wind that swept through Bergen-Belsen's barren acres.
They shouted, close the door, close the door, close the door, it is cold, it is close, it is cold, it is cold. And it was terrible for them, of course.
What did the Frank girls look like when you saw them there in the barracks?
Terrible, terrible, sick, thin, no hair. The eyes very big eyes, because they were so thin.
Almost impossible to imagine, but once there had been a time when the name Bergen-Belsen brought hope to the eyes of Jews due to be transported here. In the early years, the Nazis planned it as a camp for Jews who might be used for exchange for German prisoners of war. In those long-ago days, Anna's school friend, Lies Goslar, had been sent here with her sister and father, the former German government minister. In early 1945, Lies discovered she was in the compound right next to the Dutch women from Auschwitz.
One day a friend of mine tells me, you know, between all these women, there is your friend Anne Frank. And I don't know, I felt very crazy because I was thinking the whole time Anne is safe and she's in Switzerland. I was sure of this. This was what the tenant said to me. And so I had no choice to go also near this barbed wire. This was not allowed. And the German in the watchtower was watching us, and you know, he would have shot if he would have caught us. But so we couldn't see. I told you there were a barbed wire with straw, and we couldn't see the other side. So I just went near at dark, and I start to call, hello, hello, something like this. And who answered me was Mrs. Van Pels. It was real. Maybe that the Dutch woman went near the barbed wire because the other ones didn't know anybody. So I don't know. And I remember I even didn't ask her, how are you? Because I knew her, not very good. But immediately she said to me, you want Anne? And I said, yes. And she says, you know, I will call her for you. Margot, I can't call for you. She's very sick already. But Anne, I will call for you. And so I was standing there in the cold and I was waiting. And then suddenly I heard somebody calling me, and it was Anne. And this was awful. First thing, we both were starting to cry. And then I said, what are you doing here? You are in Switzerland. And she answered me, we wanted this rumor to go around because we hoped then the Germans will not look after us. And then she said she had nobody anymore. And this was not right, and I am so very sorry, because she said my mother is dead, and her mother really was dead at that moment, but she couldn't know. She was sure her mother was killed the moment she left, but her mother came out later, was not killed, she just died of exhaustion in the beginning of January. Her sister, she knew, was very, very sick already. But now her father. Look, if it was Mengele or somebody else, they wouldn't know how old you are. They would see only naked bodies. And Mr. Frank was 55 years old, but he was only 1 month in the Dutch camp, so he looked still very good. And the Germans just looked and saw somebody that still can walk, so they sent him to the right to live. But Anne thought they go by the age, and she was sure of it. My father is dead, he is an old man. And I always think, if she had known her father is still alive after her sister died, she just was without any hope. Then maybe she had, you know, it was only 1 month she died before the liberation. But she didn't know, and so she had really nothing to live for.
At this time, as a special prisoner being kept for possible exchange, Lies Grosler received a parcel from the Red Cross.
All my friends, everybody gave me a glove or a little sock and a little bread, so I came back at night with such a small package. And then I hear her again, and we were speaking. I told her about my little sister. I told her that my mother wasn't alive anymore. She didn't know. Miep only told her that the baby died. And my father was then already in hospital. He died 25 of February, and this was before. And I threw the package over, and then I heard her crying or shouting. And I couldn't understand. So what happened? The lady next to me, she caught the package, and she ran away with it, and she didn't give her anything. So I said, I will try for another time. And really, I tried another time. And this time, she caught the package, and it was the last time I saw her.
More than 50,000 of Bergen-Belsen's inmates died in 1945 as disease and starvation ravaged the camp. Typhus, carried by lice, was a particularly horrible killer.
Het is verschrikkelijk als je vol met luizen zit. Nou, ze hebben hun kleren weggegooid. Anne had haar kleren weggegooid en kwam alleen gehuld in haar grijze deken, huilende bij ons. Lientje lag ziek. En ik kon ook niks anders doen dan haar kleren geven die ze weer aankon. En haar wat ontluizingsmateriaal geven. En ik heb beloofd de volgende dag naar haar toe te komen, naar hun toe te komen. Want ze zei, je moet komen, Margot is zo ziek. Toen was Margot dus al doodziek. Ik veronderstel dat ze ook vlektyfus had. Ik weet het niet. Maar ik kon de volgende dag niet wegkomen. En het heeft zeker een dag of 4, 5 geduurd voordat ik naar haar toe gegaan ben. En toen waren ze al dood. Allebei dood.
And all of a sudden, I didn't see them anymore. But you could not pay attention. The place was empty. We were sick. And when I was so ill, to speak about myself, why I couldn't pay more attention than I did. They were not anymore there, dead. That was dead. Outside into the ground, all of them were swept away. Boom, there outside.
Ik weet niet of ik het kan vertellen. Vlees veranderd. Van lijken. Heel moeilijk om... Laat maar. Ik kan het niet verder vertellen. Maar de lijken bij ons in de barak, we konden ze bijna niet meer tillen. Die werden tussen de barakken op een hoop gegooid. En op mijn netvlies staat deze mensen in alle mogelijke houdingen, in alle mogelijke vormen, besneeuwd, helemaal naakt, want ze werden altijd uitgekleed. Op een hoop, met wijd open ogen. We hebben geprobeerd zoveel mogelijk ogen te sluiten. Het lukte niet altijd.
Bergen-Belsen as filmed by British liberators. A place where humanity had been reduced to the worst indignities, where cannibalism had become part of a desperate struggle to quench the most appalling hunger. And only a few hundred yards away the Germans kept vast supplies of food and medicine, while their prisoners died by the tens of thousands. In November 1943, a year and a half before her death, and in the safety of her Amsterdam hiding place, Anna Frank had a nightmare in which Hannelie Goslar suddenly appeared before her, Hannelie Goslar in a concentration camp.
I saw her there, dressed in rags, her face thin and worn. She looked at me with such sadness and reproach in her enormous eyes that I could read the message in them. Oh, Anna, why have you deserted me? Help me, rescue me from this hell. And I can't help her. I can only stand by and watch while other people suffer and die. All I can do is pray to God to bring her back to us. If only I could help her. Dear God, I have everything I could wish for while fate has her in its deadly clutches. Hannelie, if only I could take you away. If only I could share everything I have with you. It's too late, but I'll never forget her again, and I'll always pray for her. Yours, Anna.
She didn't do so much wrong, you know, if you are in this age. But this is one of the reasons that I tell the story now, because it is the other way around. Yes, today I am standing here and she is dead. And so I'm quite obliged to tell about her. And she wanted to be so very famous. I can't help a lot of this, but a little bit. I think what a waste such a young life should end, and without any reason. She could really have given something to the world. The whole thing is crazy. Yeah? My father died there 1 week after I saw her. And I don't know. I cannot judge this whole period. Nobody can understand it, I think. I don't know.
Auschwitz had been liberated 2.5 months before Bergen-Belsen. On a freezing January the 27th, 1945, a Ukrainian division of the Soviet army, accompanied by a film crew, arrived at the site of the most successful experiment in mass murder in mankind's history. The last SS guards had already fled, leaving behind only those prisoners too young or infirm to be led away on the now notorious death marches. The gassings at Auschwitz had already stopped the previous November, the gas chambers dynamited, but in a wild attempt to further cover their tracks, the SS dragged thousands of prisoners away with them in desperate flight in the biting cold. Those of the exhausted prisoners who could not keep up were shot at the side of the road by their German escort. Tens of thousands perished somewhere in Europe of hunger, thirst, or exhaustion, or from an SS bullet. Fritz Pfeffer had been amongst those taken away before the Russians came, to die on December the 20th, 1944, in Neuengamme concentration camp in Germany. Anna's boyfriend from the days in the annex, Peter von Pels, was marched out of Auschwitz by the Germans on January the 16th and taken to Mauthausen death camp in Austria, where he died on May the 5th, 1945, just 3 days before the Americans liberated that camp. His mother, Auguste von Pels, had been sent on a crazy journey across Germany and Czechoslovakia, first to Bergen-Belsen, then to Theresienstadt, and later still in the last days of the Reich to an unknown camp where she too died, another of the millions of anonymous bodies left behind by Hitler's failed vision of a 1,000-year empire. Otto Frank, weighing less than 115 pounds, was amongst the lucky few that the Russians found alive in Auschwitz. When he was sufficiently recovered, Otto wrote to his mother in Switzerland, where she had lived since before the war. His letters and postcards then remained forgotten in the attic of her home in Basel for nearly 50 years, until they were discovered by his nephew in May 1994.
Auschwitz, 23rd February 1945. Dearest Mother, hopefully these lines will reach you, bringing you and all my loved ones the news that I have been liberated by the Russians, that I am healthy and in good spirits, and that I am being well taken care of. I do not know where Edith and the children are. We have been separated since September 5th, 1944. I just hope to see them back in good health. I'm longing to see you all again and hope that this will be possible soon. All my love, greetings, and kisses. Your son Otto.
So it was that Otto Frank, the only survivor of the 8 who had been in hiding in those years in Amsterdam, took the long journey back to his Dutch adopted homeland. By May, with the war in Europe ended, his Russian liberators had sent him by various means to the Black Sea port of Odessa, and from there he was placed on a New Zealand merchant ship bound for France.
26th May 1945. The steamer Monovai. Dearest Mother and all you loved ones, tomorrow we will arrive in Marseille and this letter can hopefully be mailed. I imagine I will be able to telegraph you so that you will get the news of my return in good health. All my hope is the children. I cling to the conviction that they are alive and that we will be together again. Unfortunately, Edith did not survive. She died on January 6, 1945 in the hospital of starvation. Her body could not withstand attack of influenza. The closer we get to home, the more impatient we get to hear news of our loved ones. What happened in all these years? We own nothing anymore. We won't find a pin when we get back. The Germans stole everything. No photograph, no letter, no document will remain there. Financially, we had no worries during the last years. I earned good money and saved. Now all is gone. But I don't worry about this. We have gone through too much to worry about things like that. Only the children. The children are what count. I hope to get news from you straight away. Maybe you already have news of the girls. I cannot write about everything that I am thinking of. I have to stay in Holland, as with the exception of a tattooed number on my arm, I have no papers and therefore must think of seeing you later. The main thing is that we have contact. We hope to see each other soon. With innermost greetings and kisses and love, your Otto.
My husband was working on the station to registreren all the people who are coming down from the concentration camps. And he asked everyone, have you seen Mr. Frank, or have you heard about Mr. Frank? And one evening he came at home and I said, I have good news for you. Otto Frank is coming home. And when he said this, we lived downstairs, Mr. Frank came along the window. I ran to the door. At first what I asked was, where's Edith? Otto Frank said to me, Edith never come, but I have hope for the children. And he came to us, and because he had no house, no nothing, he lived 7 years in our house. But the life go on. We go every day to the office, but I do not give him the diary of Anne Frank.
You may not know this, but when he was on the ship from Odessa to Marseille,
Yeah.
Otto wrote a letter to his mother. And in that letter he said this: Kugler and Kleiman, and especially Miep, her husband, and Beb Foscoe cared for us for 2 years with everything we needed, in spite of the dangers and unprecedented sacrifices they made. One cannot describe it. I will never be able to repay what all these people have done.
I never know about this. No. That is for the first time I heard it. Thank you.
While Miep kept the diary secret from Otto in case Anna should return, he was desperate to find his daughters. He advertised in newspapers and visited the Dutch Red Cross most days, always asking for news of Anna and Margot. Then, at the end of July, he was told that someone knew of their fate. In August, he had the tragic news confirmed.
Hij stond op de stoep en belde aan. Hij bleef op de stoep staan. Want hij zei, ben jij Jannie Brandes? Ja. Mag ik binnenkomen? Want het was een hele beleefde meneer. Hij kwam binnen, hij kwam de gang in. En hij bleef hier staan en zei, wat is er met mijn dochters gebeurd? Ik ben Otto. Ik kon bijna niet uit mijn woorden komen, want het is een ontzettend moeilijk iets om iemand te vertellen dat je kinderen niet meer leven. Ik zei, Ze zijn er niet meer. Die man die werd lijkbleek en plofte op mijn stoel neer. Ik heb gewoon mijn armen om hem heen geslagen.
When the girl's death had been confirmed, Miepkes gave up the secret she had kept hidden from Otto since the day of the family's capture more than a year before. From her top drawer she handed him 3 books and a sheaf of loose papers, Anna's diary, which she herself had never read.
And took the diary out of my desk and gave him it with the words, "That is a testament van je dochter Anne. Can you look? Can you see how this man looked at me? Lost his wife, lost his 2 children. He had a diary."
Otto transcribed sections of the diary for his mother in Switzerland. He also started showing it to friends, seeking their views on what to do with his daughter's unique legacy. They all advised him to have it published, but his efforts met with no success. Then this brief article, written by a friend of a friend, appeared in an Amsterdam paper in April 1946, and finally a publisher stepped forward. Het Achterhuis, the back house, appeared in June 1947. Initially it made little impact. Then in the 1950s, German, French, English and other translations began to appear. In 1955, a stage adaptation opened on Broadway to a rapturous reception. The transformation of the 15-year-old German Jewish refugee into an emblem of the Holocaust gathered pace. The 1959 feature film based on the play added further to this process. To some, she had become little short of a saint, but her diary, at the very least, had become a publishing phenomenon. In 1953, Otto had remarried and moved to Switzerland. In the absence of Anna, he became the focus for his daughter's celebrity, and he in turn came to symbolize the perfect father that so many children crave. They wrote to him from around the world in their thousands, and he replied to each individually.
If young people are writing to me, after having read the diary, I start to think that is for me one of the most precious.
Although Otto developed relationships, in some case close ones, with many of the children who wrote to him, he had to admit that he had never fully understood his own daughter in her lifetime. Was she in fact the optimist and cheerful person that he saw as a child?
Well, she showed herself like that, but in fact I only learned to know her really through her diary.
Throughout these years, one persistent problem refused to go away. Exploiting the numerous differences between the different language versions of the diary, which were never formally explained in the various editions, together with further fictional scenes invented for the play and the film, neo-Nazis around the world, interested in throwing doubt on the very existence of the Holocaust, alleged that the diary was a hoax. Painful and inconclusive lawsuits followed, but it was only in 1980, after Otto's death, that the authenticity of the diary was finally tested scientifically. The extensive report by the Netherlands State Institute for War Documentation took 5 years to complete and was eventually published together with a comparative study of all the versions of Anna's diary. It categorically stated that the diary was genuine in every respect. In 1960, one of Holland's most secret places became one of its most public. The Franks Annex was opened as a museum and is now visited by over 600,000 tourists a year. Otto also created charitable foundations to perpetuate Anna's message to the world. Anna was not simply to be commemorated, but her short life was to become a more general force for good.
To fight against prejudice and discrimination, respectively hatred against people of different race and religion.
Since 1985, a touring exhibition telling the story of Anna's life and its relevance to contemporary world affairs has travelled from country to country, from Moscow to Minneapolis, South America to South Africa. It has also shown that the diary has had some surprising readers in surprising places.
During the many years my comrades and I spent in prison, we derived inspiration from the courage and tenacity of those who challenge injustice, even under the most difficult circumstances. Some of us read Anne Frank's diary on Robben Island and derived much encouragement from it.
Very interesting is it the letters of the German children. They always ask me everything because they wrote me, my father or grandfather didn't tell me anything about the war. They say always, that is the past, that is over. But it is not true. The past goes always with you in your whole life, and we can learn from the past.